What's good, math family? In today's video, we're going to look at the 2025 Geometry June Regents exam, and we're going to break down each question and show you how to properly get to the correct answer. Let's get started. In example number 1, they tell us that the perimeter of a triangle is 18, and they want us to determine the new perimeter after a dilation with a scale factor of 3. So family, this is real simple. We have the perimeter of 18, we multiply it by the scale factor of 3, and our answer should be 54. Now, the concept behind this, right? Let's say we drew out the triangles, right? We don't know the side lengths. Let's say if it was a equilateral triangle, right? All sides are the same. If we multiply each side by that scale factor, 18, 18, and 18, right? Multiply by 3. Once we add that, perimeter is going to be 54. Let's say if we had a 5, 6, 7 triangle. If we do the same thing, right, multiply by 3, 15 plus 18 plus 21 is going to give us the same perimeter of 4. So this is what they mean when they ask us for the new perimeter with a scale factor of 3. In the next example, they want us to determine the height of the Washington Monument. And the only information they gave us was that we're 200 feet from the base of the monument, which you can see right here, and they gave us the angle of elevation, which is 70.19. So we should know that we are going to use trig functions to determine the actual height. And relative to that angle, 70.19, here's our hypotenuse, the adjacent side, and the opposite side. So to figure out the height, which is x, we're going to use the opposite over the adjacent, which is a tangent function. So we have tan 70.19 is equal to x over 200. And then from here, we could get rid of our fraction by multiplying by the denominator. Another way you could think about this is cross multiplying. That's another method. But once we go to the next step, we're going to have 200 times tan 70.19 is equal to x. So when we simplify, we're going to get x is equal to 555.217 feet. And when we look at this answer and our answer choices, and they want us to round to the nearest foot, that means our answer choice is going to be number 3. They want us to determine the sequence of transformations that show triangle EQA is congruent to triangle SUL. So we're trying to get a transformation that maps the first triangle onto the second one. And when we think about these rotation rules, right? Let's look at point E. So we know point E is at -2, 5. And the rotation rules tells us that the first order pair, if we do a 90 degrees counterclockwise rotation, X and Y are going to switch positions and Y now becomes negative. So if we apply that same rule, this becomes -5, -2. So if I plot that point, it's going to be right here. Now the transformation tells us that they want us to translate this 9 units to the right and 1 unit down. So once we do that, we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then go down 1. So this checks off good for point E. And what I would tell you is let's repeat this process with another point. So let's say we pick point Q. Point Q now is going to have the ordered pair -2, 1. So now if we follow those transformation rules, this is now going to be -1, -2. So that's going to be right here. Now if I follow that same transformation and we go over 9 units and then down 1, this is going to map on U. So right off the bat, it seems like answer choice number 1 is going to be the best answer choice. And just remember that E should be on S, Q should be on U and A should be paired up with L. When we check E and Q, we see that those two do match up with the corresponding part for the other triangle. They tell us that two sides of a triangle have lengths 2 and 8, and they want us to determine the third side of the triangle. So a problem like this, we have to be mindful of the triangle inequality theorem, where basically the two smaller sides, once we add them, is supposed to be larger than the longest side. And when we look at our answer choices here, right, let's say we just use substitution method. So we have 2 plus 8 is greater than 10. So we say 10 is greater than 10. That's not true. So it looks like 10 is not the answer. And because of this first realization, we probably could say, hey, hold on. If 10 is not large enough, then this probably means that the longest side is probably 8. So what we could do now is come in and rearrange this where we say, hey, 2 plus 6 is now greater than 8. When we look at this, we're saying 8 is greater than 8. This is also a false statement. So it looks like more than likely the answer choice has to be answer choice number 2. And once we check it, right, 2 plus 7 is greater than 8. So we say 9 is greater than 8. This is a true statement. Now, sometimes what your teachers may do is they may make you come up with an expression to kind of help you determine the actual answer. So what does this expression look like? Well, let's do this, right? So we have A plus B is greater than C, right? We substitute 2 plus 8 greater than C. So that means 10 is greater than C. If you write it in terms of the variable, it means C is less than 10, right? So that's if C is the largest side. Now, if C is not the largest side, our expression could look something like this. We'll have A plus C is greater than B. So when we use this expression now, we're going to substitute. So let's say we have 2 plus C is greater than B. So now we're saying that C is greater than 6 once we simplify. So when we look at this, right, C has to be less than 10. So that means 10 is not an answer. Then it has to be greater than 6. 7 is the only number that satisfies both those inequalities. And this is 2 methods you can use to solve this type of problem. The next problem states that a regular octagon is rotated about its center, and they want us to determine which angle measure will carry the octagon onto itself. And this can be a simple problem if you understand the concept behind it. So when we draw our octagon, right, let's first start off with a circle. So when we draw an octagon, and please be mindful, family, I am not a good artist. So if this doesn't look too good, I apologize, but you guys do get the point. All right, so we have the 8 points that I'm highlighting. And the reason why I put it in a circle is because when we rotate it about the center, right, this is 360 degrees. We divide by the number of sides, which is 8, which is going to give us 45 degrees. So when we slice this octagon, right, each one of these pieces is going to be 45 degrees. So any multiple of 45 degrees is going to take 1 point and map it on the next point, and it's going to be seamless, meaning when it overlaps, it's going to be like the original shape. So when this rotates any multiple of 45, which is 45, 90, 135, and etc., this is the concept we're basically looking for. So our answer choice would be 2. To make this a little bit more simple, let's use a square for the illustration. So we have a square, and let's say we put it inside a circle. So when we look at these 4 points, we're saying to ourselves the same exact thing. Hey, how much degrees do I have to rotate 1 point so that it goes to the same position as the point in front of it where it overlaps seamlessly? And if we follow this same process, we have 360 divided by 4. So this is going to be equal to 90. So every 90-degree rotation, this square is going to perfectly overlap on itself, and this is how you'll solve this type of problem. They tell us that the equation of a circle is x squared plus y squared minus 6x plus 2y is equal to 14. And they want us to determine the coordinates of the center and the length of the radius of this circle. So just remember that we have to rearrange this, right? Where we combine the x's and the y's and then complete the square. So we'll have x squared minus 6x, and then we're going to have a c term to complete the square, plus y squared plus 2y, and its c term is equal to 14. So now when I go back and we divide the b term by 2 and square it, 6 divided by 2 is 3, 3 squared is 9. We're going to add it on both sides. Repeat the process for the y variable. So half of 2 is 1, 1 squared is 1. Add it on both sides. Now at this step, I'm focusing on both of these trinomials, and I want to break it down to its binomial that will give us this answer. So divide the b term by 2, we have x minus 3 squared plus y plus 1 squared is equal to 14 plus 10, which is 24. Now the center of our circle we could find by looking at these two values. So our center is going to be equal to positive 3, negative 1. So that's the first piece of information we need. When we look at our answer choices, answer choice number 1, number 3 are incorrect. And because of the radius, we should already know that answer choice number 4 is going to be the right one. The only way that the radius could be 5 is if this 24 was actually 25. So when we do r squared is equal to 24, and then we get rid of the exponent to find r is just equal to the square root of 24, which, like I said, is the correct answer in answer choice number 4. They tell us that in triangle HSF, angle S is 90 degrees, H of F is 30, and FS is 23. And what they want us to determine is what is the measure of angle F to the nearest degree. So family, we're back with our trig functions, all right? So we're talking about SOHCAHTOA. And we're actually going to have to use an inverse trig function to find this missing angle. So relative to F, right? Here goes the hypotenuse, opposite side, and this is the adjacent side. So right now we have adjacent and hypotenuse. So we should know that this is going to be a cosine function. So we're going to have cos of F is equal to 23 over 30. But because we're dealing with inverse, right, we're going to take the inverse of this function. All right, cos functions cancel each other out. We're left with f, and f is going to be equal to the inverse cosine function times 23 over 30. And when we go ahead and simplify this, family, let's punch this in the calculator. F is going to be equal to 39.94 degrees. And when we look at our answer choice, the nearest degree is going to be 40. So that means our answer choice is going to be number 3. In problem number 8, they tell us that triangle CAB has midsegments DE, EF, and FD. They say if CA is equal to 14, CB is equal to 20, and FB is equal to 9, what is the perimeter of quadrilateral DEFA? So this is what we're focusing on. And when we fill in the relevant information, this side is 14. We know CB is 20, and we know FB is just 9. And the most important thing we need to understand about the midsegments is that they're basically going to connect the midpoints of a triangle and cut that side in half. So if this whole side length is 14, that means CD is 7 as well as AD is 7. When we go on the opposite side, half of 20 is 10. So if we have a midsegment on this side, CE is equal to 10 and EB is also equal to 10. Then when we get to the bottom of the triangle, family, remember that EF is a midsegment for that bottom part of the triangle. So if that FB is equal to 9, and we have a midsegment, that means the other side is also 9. So now that we have most of the information filled in, we're looking for two more pieces. So we're looking for this dimension and this dimension. And another key rule with midsegments is basically understanding that the midsegment, right, whatever side is parallel to the midsegment is going to be half as long. So if we look at CA, right, this is parallel to the midsegment EF. So if it's parallel, that means it's half the distance, which is going to be 7. Same thing with midsegment DE. Midsegment DE, right, is going to be half of AB. So that means this is also going to be 9. Now, when we focus on these 4 dimensions, we're going to add 9 plus 7 plus 9 plus 7 again. So let's just write this out. 9 plus 9 plus 7 plus 7. When we simplify, this is going to give us an answer of 2, which is going to be 32 for the perimeter. They tell us that a candle can be modeled by a pyramid with a square base, and they tell us that the height of the candle is 10 centimeters and the base is 6 centimeters. And if the candle wax burns at a rate of 3.5 cubic centimeters per hour, what is the approximate number of hours this candle could burn? So the reason I notice students get this wrong is because they use the wrong formula. They come in and use the volume of a pyramid, which is 1/3 times the base times height. But that's incorrect, family. We have a square base, meaning that volume is equal to 1/3 times the base squared times height. So in this problem, volume is equal to 1/3 times our base, which is 6, and our height, which is 10. So we have 6 squared times 10. When we simplify this, right, we're going to have 36. 36 divided by 3 is going to be 12. 12 times 10. This is going to give us 120 cubic centimeters. Now, just be mindful that they told us that this candle burns at a rate of 3.5 cubic meters per hour. So now that we have the total volume, we have to take that volume, 120, and we need to divide it by 3.5. And if you include the units, right, cubic centimeters per hour, you're going to notice that our units will cancel. And we're going to get an answer of 34.28 hours. So based off this answer, we know the correct answer is going to be number 3. Please don't forget to use the correct formula and make sure you divide at the end so you understand the amount of hours. They tell us that in the diagram below, tangent SR and secant STU are drawn to circle O from the external point S. If arc TU is congruent to arc RU and arc TR is equal to 68 degrees, what is the measure of angle S? So let's fill in the information we know. We know that arc TR is 68 degrees, but we don't know the other two. So let's say we use X. So we could have the equation 2x plus 68 is equal to 360. Once we solve, we're going to get x is equal to 146 as an answer. So we know that both of these arcs, they're the same. They're equal to 146. Now that we've done that, we just need to now use the difference of an arc formula. So we're going to take the larger arc, subtract the smaller one, and divide by 2. So we have 146 minus 68 divided by 2. And when we simplify this expression, family, what we're going to get is 39 degrees. So in a problem like this, our answer choice is going to be number 3, and this is how you would correctly solve. They tell us that triangle RST has a angle measure for S of 33 degrees, RS is equal to 7, and ST is equal to 12. And they want us to determine the area of this triangle to the nearest tenth. So let's just draw an illustration so that we could kind of see what's going on. So we have RST. We know this angle measures 33 degrees, RS is 7, and ST is going to be 12. So in a situation like this, where we're trying to find the area, this is a special case, right? And with this special case, we're going to use the formula area is equal to 1/2 A times B times sine C. And we basically use this formula when we have two side lengths and an angle measure. And we have to make sure that the angle measure is in between the two sides so that we could properly use this formula. Now that we understand that, all we have to do is kind of plug in and simplify. So we're going to say that area is equal to 1/2 7 times 12 times sine 33 degrees. When we simplify this expression even further, right, we'll have 42 times sine 33 degrees. And when we simplify to our final answer, we're going to get 22.87 for the area. Now, based off rounding to the nearest tenth, that means our answer choice is going to be number 1 of 22.9. They give us triangle ABC and they list the coordinates for it. And then we have a transformation where we have A prime, B prime, and C prime, and they want us to determine what type of transformation occurred. The best way to kind of go about this, family, is just to plot the new points to see what difference is there. So we know that A prime now is at -6, 2, which would be right here. So here goes A prime. Then we look at B prime. This is -2, 2, which is right here. And then C, which is going to be 8, 1, which would be something right here. So when we look at this, right, let's say we connected this. This is what new triangle looks like. Now, when we think about a dilation, right, we know it cannot be a dilation because only the x values change. The y values did not change. If it was a dilation, typically both of those are going to change. And when we look at, and another thing, when we look at dilations, they're typically not going to change in their shape. If you look at the shape of this, it's not the same. So we know that it can't be a dilation. When we think about translation, it cannot be a translation because with translations, the size is not affected. So that's also incorrect. Now, when we get to vertical and horizontal stretch, this one becomes this is where it becomes interesting. However, if we think of a vertical stretch means that there was some type of change to the y values. And when we look at this, there were no change to the y values. So it cannot be this either. But when we look at horizontal stretch, we can see that there's a relationship, right? So let's say we look at point C. So from the y-axis to C, we went over 4 spaces. But from the y-axis to C prime, we went twice the distance. We went 8. The same thing with B. For B, we went 1 away from the axis, but B prime, we doubled that to go 2. So this is why it will be a horizontal stretch and why it's important to kind of understand vocabulary when you're taking these type of exams. The next problem states, which equation represents a line parallel to the line represented by y is equal to 4x plus 6 and passing through the point -3, 2. All right, so when we have parallel lines, they have the same slope. So that means 3 and 4 are automatically gone. Now we're going to use the point slope formula to see which one of these has the proper substitution using the point -3, 2. So we have y minus the y coordinate, which is 2, is equal to our slope, which we know is 4 because it's the same, times x minus -3, right? We know this turns positive. So y minus 2 is equal to 4 times x plus 3. When we look at our answer choices, this is going to be number 1. If we analyze answer choice number 2, do you see how they incorrectly substituted the x and y coordinate? That is why it's incorrect and the answer choice is number 1. The next problem asks us to determine which dimensional figure is always formed when a plane intersects a right cylinder perpendicular to its base. And in these type of situations, family, there's typically two situations. So let's draw our right cylinder, right? Here's the base, here's a little backside that we don't see. So if the intersection occurs perpendicular, that means that there's going to be a right angle that forms. So if we switch colors, right, we cut this perpendicular, right, top and bottom, and then we connect these points of intersection. If you look, you'll notice that the shape right here is going to be a rectangle. And this would be our answer. However, the other situation is where we have the same right cylinder and the intersection occurs parallel. So if it occurs parallel, that means it's going to cut it in the same direction as the base. So now let's say if we're in the same direction, right? So we draw these two lines, we connect those points of intersection, and then when we look inside the cylinder, we're going to notice that the shape that forms is going to be a circle. So these are typically the two situations that occur in this type of problem. They tell us that triangle KMP is below, and they want us to know that CE is parallel to MP. So we know that these two lines are parallel. And they tell us that KC is equal to 8 and CM is equal to 3 and that CE is equal to 12. And they want us to determine the length of MP. So we're going to use X to represent. Now, I think a lot of students get this wrong because they want to use a proportion, which we can, but they set it up as 8 over 3 divided by 12 over X. And this is wrong, family. What we should do, this is optional, draw it out. So the first triangle, side length of 8, base is 12. And the second triangle, once we combine both sides, 8 and 3, we're going to get 11 over X. So as a result, we're able to now create a proportion, especially because these triangles show some type of congruency. So now we have 8 over 12 is equal to 11 over X. And when we cross multiply, we're going to get 8X is equal to 132. And after we divide by 8, we're going to get 16.5 for a final answer. And that means our answer is number 2. The next example, they tell us that point O divides COA such that CO and OA have a 1:4 ratio. And they tell us the coordinates of point C and point A, and they want us to determine the coordinates of O to make this a true statement. So this can be a challenging question, family, but if you understand how to use the segment formula, this can be simple. So we know the X coordinate that we're looking for is going to be found by using X1 plus our ratio A divided by A plus B times X2 minus X1, right? So when I look at this problem right here, let's do it. So for the X coordinate, X1 is going to be equal to what? -2 plus, and just remember, here is the ratio that they gave us. But if we have a 1:4 ratio, that means we have 5 equal parts. So when we substitute, this is going to be 1 over 5, and then X2 is just going to be 3 minus the X1 coordinate, which is -2. So this turns into addition. So X is equal to -2 plus 5 over 5, which simplifies to 1. When we simplify, we know that X is equal to -1. And our answer choice, only answer choice 4 has the correct X value. But for the video sake, let's say if we had another answer choice that has -1 for the X. If we repeated this process with Y, right? The first Y coordinate is -9. Ratio stays the same, 1 over 5. And then we're going to do 6 minus -9. Now when we simplify, y is equal to -9 plus 15 over 5. So y is equal to -9 plus 3, y is equal to -6. So when we put this ordered pair together, it's going to be the same answer that we got. They tell us that a spherical balloon is fully inflated with helium to a diameter of 1.7 feet. And they tell us that if helium costs 80 cents per cubic feet, what is the cost to completely fill the balloon with helium? So when we're talking about the volume of a sphere, we're going to use the formula volume is equal to 4 divided by 3 times pi r cubed. And please just be mindful that the diameter is 1.7 and we need the radius, okay? So when we think about this, this means that the radius is actually equal to 0.85. And when we substitute, family, there's more than one way that we could substitute. So the first substitution, we could use V is equal to 4 over 3 times pi, 3.14, times the diameter divided by 2 cubed. Or you could already kind of simplify. So we have 3.14 times the actual radius, which is 0.85 cubed. Either one of these are going to get us to the correct answer. So once we simplify further, right, we're going to have V is equal to, and I'm going to use this bottom one, family. So V is equal to 2.57. This is our volume, right? 2.57. But we know that every cubic foot, it costs 80 cents to fill. So now with the total volume, 2.57, we have to multiply this to figure out how much is it going to cost to actually fill the entire balloon. So once we do that, multiply 2.57 by 0.80, we're going to get X is equal to $2.06. After rounding, your answer should be 2.056. So answer choice 1 is the correct one. In triangle ABD below, they tell us that the altitude BC is drawn to the hypotenuse AD, and they tell us the lengths for AC and CD. And what they want us to do is to determine the length of BA. So we're going to put X right here. And we could use the leg rule, altitude rule. I don't like to get too deep into it. Sometimes I just like to tell students use proportions and understand how to set it up. So we have ABC, right? This is a smaller triangle. Here goes the hypotenuse. Here goes the leg. Now, if we draw the larger triangle, right, we have ABD. Here goes the hypotenuse, which is 6.8. And now the leg is going to be X. Now, the way that we're going to set this up is going to be 2.5. Oops, and I put 8, family, my bad. 2.5 over X is equal to X over 6.8. And now we could cross multiply. So once we cross multiply, family, we're going to get X squared is equal to 17. Take the square root. X is equal to 4.1. So this is a very quick and easy way to do this. Now, another way to do this is to take into account the altitude. So let's say we substituted the variable y for the altitude. And let's get some space real quick. If we chose this part instead, what we could do is 2.5, let's write this out, 2.5 over y is now equal to y over 4.3. And once we do this, we're going to get y squared is equal to 10.75. Now we're going to do the same thing. So the square root of 10.75 is going to be equal to 3.28. So now that we understand that, family, this is 3.28. Look at what's going on now. we have two sides of the triangle, and we can use the Pythagorean theorem to now determine the last side. So we have 2.5 squared plus 3.28 squared is equal to c squared. So now, once we do this, family, all right, we know this is 10.75. When we square 2.5, we're going to get 6.25. So c squared is equal to 17. And when we repeat the process, we're going to get the same thing. C is equal to 4.1. So this is two methods to solve the same problem. Try to learn both, or at least master one, so that you can use it to your advantage on the exam. They tell us that trapezoid ZOYD has parallel sides ZO and DY. If angle Z is equal to 141 degrees and angle Y is equal to 73 degrees, what is the measure of angle D? So you guys know I'm going to tell you to draw it out. So we have a trapezoid. All right. You guys know I can't draw for to save my life. And then we're going to label it Z, O, Y, D. So they tell us that ZO and DY are parallel. All right. And then we know that angle Y is going to be 73 degrees and angle Z is 141 degrees. So how they're going to try to get you is everyone's going to look and say, okay, I know that typically with trapezoids, base angles are congruent. So everyone's going to think the answer is 273 degrees, but they did not tell us this is an isosceles trapezoid. So we cannot assume that, family. But one thing that we should kind of understand as a result of the parallel lines, right? It's parallel lines is that same side interior angles are going to be consecutive. You have to kind of think back to parallel lines cut by a transversal. So that means this angle and D are going to be supplementary. So we could create an equation, x plus 141 is equal to 180. And after we subtract, we're going to get x is equal to 39 degrees, meaning that this is answer choice number 1. So when you have a problem like this, please be mindful and don't assume unless the problem specifically states it. Triangle ABC is translated 5 units to the left and 2 units up to map onto triangle PQR, and they want us to determine which statement is not always true. So with this type of problem, let's draw out a diagram. So here goes our first triangle, right? A, B, C. And then we have the second triangle, which is, to the left and up 2. And we have to make sure that when we label it with the same orientation. So we know P maps with A, Q maps with B, and R maps with C. So now they want us to determine, or when we look at answer choice 1, triangle PQR is congruent to triangle ABC. Well, this is always going to be true because this is a translation, and translations are not going to change the size or the shape of the figure. So this will always be true. Now, when we get over to answer choice 2, it says that angle A is congruent to angle Q. This one looks like a very good answer because the only way that angle A and angle Q are going to be the same is if this is an equilateral triangle, because right now angle P and A are corresponding. A does not correspond with Q, so this can be the answer. So let's just bubble it in, right? Then we get over to BQ, which says that it's equal to 29. So I want you to kind of understand what they're saying. So let's say we look at B and we look at Q and we're doing the transformation, right? So we draw kind of like a triangle. And you don't have to draw it like this, but if you understand the concept, this is why I'm drawing it like this. So from B, we went to the left 5 units and then up 2. So what we don't know is the hypotenuse when we create another x. But for us to solve this, we just need to use the Pythagorean theorem to determine whether this is true or not. So 2 squared plus 5 squared is equal to c squared, right? That's BQ. So we have 4 plus 25 is equal to c squared. So we know c squared is equal to 29. Now, if we want to get c by itself, we get rid of the exponent. C is equal to the square root of 29. So based off this transformation, this will always be true because the distance is not going to change. You could also probably use the distance formula to confirm this, right? So that's always going to be true if the transformation remains the same. Now, we're talking about RQ and CB, all right? They said they're equal. So let's look at it. We have CB here, and then I don't know why I put an R. I'm sorry, family. This should be R. That was a mistake. All right. Now, when we look at this, this is going to always be true because when we look at these two parts of the triangle, they're corresponding parts. And we know corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. So this is always going to be true if it's just based off a translation. So when we look at this, that means that our correct answer is going to be answer choice number 2. A is not always going to be congruent to Q unless it's an equilateral triangle. In the diagram below, congruent triangles PEN and PAL are drawn. And they want us to determine which rigid motion maps triangle PEN onto triangle PAL. So answer choice 1 is a point reflection of PEN through P. But if you kind of understand point reflections, what we're saying is this distance from point E to P, right? We're going to go in the same distance in the opposite direction. And now P, the original point, is going to be the midpoint. So now E prime is going to be way out here, family. And if we do the same thing with N, right, that point reflection is going to be way out here. So based off this transformation, this is not going to be correct. When we look at answer choice number 2, it says a reflection of PEN over the angle bisector EPA. So we know we're going to cut this in half right here. This is the bisector. And then when we do a reflection, we have to understand that when we do a reflection, point E is going to flip over this line and now land on point A. And point N is going to flip over and land on point L. And when we look at PEN and PAL, it has the same orientation. So this looks like it's probably going to be the best answer choice. But let's look at the other two. Then it says a rotation of PEN about point P, mapping PE onto PA. So let's think about it, right? We'll keep that line by angle P there. If we rotated this where PE maps onto PA, what we have to understand is that PN is going to be way out here. So just by looking at this, this is going to be wrong. This is not the same orientation that we want. PE and PA match up, but that last side is not going to match up. So this is why it's not a good answer. So we're going to throw this out as well. Then when we look at the last answer choice, number 4, a translation of PEN along PE mapping PE onto A. That's very similar. And as a matter of fact, let's erase so we could put this here. That's very similar to what we just notified. If we put this right here, this is how the triangle is going to look. And just by this merit, we know that this is incorrect as well. A cone has a height of 8 inches and a volume of 75.4 cubic inches. What is the diameter of the cone to the nearest inch? So we know the volume of a cone is going to be V is equal to 1/3 pi times r squared times h. And we do know what the volume is, and we do know what the height is. So when we substitute, we have 75.4 is equal to 1/3. I'm going to substitute 3.14 per pi times r squared times h. So family, with a problem like this, you could just do this all in one step, or you could kind of separate it. But what we should have is that r squared is equal to 75.4 divided by 1 over 3 times 3.14 times 8. Once we simplify, we're going to get r is equal to 9.0047. So we're just going to leave it as 9. So we know that the rate r squared is equal to 9. So when we simplify, r is going to be equal to 3. Now, please don't circle answer choice number 3 because they didn't ask us for the radius, they asked us for the diameter. So when we multiply by 2, we know that the diameter for this cone is going to be 6 inches. Moving on to the last problem of this video, family, and if this review has been helpful, we're going to ask that you smash the like button for us, subscribe to the channel, and leave comments down below if you have questions on this video or if there's topics you'd like to see in the future. It says that the line represented by the equation 5x minus 2y is equal to 10 is transformed by dilation centered at 2, 0 with a scale factor of 2. The image of the line, and they want us to complete the statement. But with these type of problems, when we talk about dilations and the center of dilation with a line, the two situations is the center point is either on the line or the center point is off the line. If the center point is off the line, then that means the new equation is going to be parallel to the original one. And then if the center is on the line, we just have to understand that the new equation is the same as the original equation. And when I look at this equation in this ordered pair, right, we should know that the answer choice is going to be 1, is the original line. Why? Because when we substitute this in, right, 5 times 2 minus 2 times 0 is equal to 10. We're going to get 10 is equal to 10. So this is a true statement. And because it's a true statement, it means that that point falls on the line. And this is why the image of the new line is just the original line. Thank you guys so much for continuing to watch and support Algebra 1 with Mr. Peters. Please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave comments down below if you had questions on this video or if there's topics you'd like to see on our channel in the future. Thank you guys so much for continuing to watch and support Algebra 1 with Mr. Peters.